April 14, 1945. 11:23 a.m. Testing facility Kummersdorf, 32 kilometers south of Berlin. Hauptmann Ernst Keller is standing in a concrete bunker, watching a prototype tank burn. The tank is designated Panzer die Maus. It weighs 188 tons. It has been on fire for 6 minutes. The turret is still rotating. The hydraulics have not failed. The crew inside is dead. Soviet artillery is landing 2 kilometers north. Keller has orders to destroy everything before evacuation. He has 4 hours. There are 11 prototypes on site. Most of them do not run. The Maus was designed in 1942. It was supposed to be invulnerable. Armor 240 millimeters thick on the turret face, a 128 millimeter main gun, a coaxial 75 millimeter gun. The engine is a Daimler-Benz Marine diesel producing 1,200 horsepower. The transmission fails every 40 kilometers. The fuel consumption is 500 liters per 100 kilometers. There is no bridge in Europe that can support its weight. 2 prototypes were completed. One is burning. The other is in a shed with a cracked engine block. Keller lights a thermite charge on the second hull. The shed catches fire. He moves to the next building. Inside the building there are 3 Focke-Wulf Ta 183 fighter aircraft, swept wings, jet engines. They were supposed to counter Allied bombers. The design was finalized in February. None of the engines have been tested at full power. The airframes are complete, but there is no fuel. The Reich has no aviation gasoline left. The refineries were bombed in December. Keller sets charges on the wings and fuselage. He does not wait for detonation. He moves to the next structure. The next structure is underground, a reinforced hangar built into the hillside. Inside there are components for 6 V3 superguns. Each gun is 130 meters long. They were designed to shell London from fixed positions in France. The barrels are segmented. Side chambers provide additional propellant boost. The projectiles are fin-stabilized and weigh 140 kilograms. The guns were never assembled. The French sites were bombed by the RAF before construction finished. The components were shipped here in March. Keller does not have enough explosives for the barrels. He orders his men to pour gasoline into the chambers and ignite it. The barrels warp from the heat, but do not melt. Soviet tanks are 5 kilometers away now. He can hear the engines. Keller moves to a smaller bunker. Inside there are crates marked with SS runes. The crates contain prototypes of the Zielgerät 12V129 infrared rifle sight. Vampire. 60 units were produced. The sight mounts on an STG-44 assault rifle. It allows aimed fire in complete darkness at ranges up to 400 meters. The power supply is a backpack battery weighing 13 kilograms. The battery lasts 30 minutes. Each unit costs more than a Panzer IV tank. Keller smashes the optics with a rifle butt. He throws the batteries into a fire pit. The batteries explode. One of his men is burned. Keller does not stop. The next building contains artillery prototypes. A Karl Gerät 040 self-propelled mortar. It fires 600mm shells weighing 2 tons. The shells demolish reinforced bunkers. The mortar can fire 4 rounds per hour. It requires a separate ammunition carrier and a crane vehicle to reload. The prototype has a cracked breech. It was damaged during a test firing in February. The repair parts never arrived. Keller sets a charge on the barrel. The explosion splits the tube. He moves to the next weapon. There are 2 Sturmtiger assault guns parked under camouflage netting. Each one fires a 380mm rocket-propelled mortar shell. The shells are designed to destroy buildings. The vehicles carry 14 rounds. Reload time is 10 minutes per shell. Both vehicles are operational, but there is no ammunition. The rocket propellant is unstable and degrades in storage. The last shipment arrived in January. All shells failed quality control. Keller orders his men to drive the vehicles into a pit and set them on fire. The armor is too thick to penetrate with available explosives. The Sturmtigers burn for 3 hours. Soviet reconnaissance units are 2 kilometers south now. Keller can see dust from their vehicles. He has 90 minutes left. He moves to the final bunker. Inside, there are documents, design schematics, test reports, production orders, files marked Geheim Kommandosache, secret command matter. Keller starts burning them in a steel drum. The paper does not burn fast enough. He pours gasoline on the pile. The fire spreads to wooden crates nearby. The crates contain components for guided anti-tank missiles. X-7 Rotkäppchen, Red Riding Hood, wire-guided, range 1,200 meters, penetration 200 millimeters. The guidance system uses a joystick and a flare tracker on the missile tail. 12 prototypes were built. 8 failed during testing. The remaining 4 are in the crates. The fire consumes them before Keller can remove them. He finds another set of files. These are labeled Henschel HS-293, guided glide bombs. They sank multiple Allied ships in the Mediterranean. The late-model versions have television guidance. A camera in the nose transmits images to the bombardier. The bombardier steers the bomb onto target using a control stick. The system works, but the transmitter has a range of only 4 kilometers. Allied jamming reduces this to less than 2. Production stopped in February. The files burn. Keller moves deeper into the bunker. There is a steel vault. The door is locked. Keller shoots the lock with his pistol. It does not open. He uses a pry bar. The door bends but holds. He sets a small charge. The door blows inward. Inside there are canisters, stainless steel, sealed with lead gaskets. The labels are chemical formulas: tabun, sarin, soman, nerve agents. Keller does not touch them. He backs out of the vault. He orders his men to leave the bunker. He sets a large demolition charge at the entrance and retreats 200 meters. The charge detonates. The bunker entrance collapses. The vault is buried under tons of rubble. Soviet infantry are 800 meters away. Keller can hear small arms fire. His convoy has 3 trucks and 1 half-track. The trucks are loaded with surviving documents and small equipment. The half-track has a mounted MG-42. Keller orders the convoy to move west. They drive through wooded terrain to avoid roads. Soviet aircraft are overhead. The convoy stops every 10 minutes to hide under trees. Progress is slow. After 30 kilometers, 1 truck runs out of fuel. The driver siphons fuel from another truck. They continue. At 4:17 p.m., they encounter a Soviet roadblock, 2 T-34 tanks and infantry. The convoy reverses. The Soviets open fire. The rear truck is hit. It explodes. The remaining vehicles escape into the forest. Keller orders the convoy to split. 1 truck goes north. The half-track and remaining truck go west. Keller is in the truck. They drive for 2 hours. At 6:34 p.m., they reach a Wehrmacht checkpoint near Belitz. The checkpoint commander tells Keller that Berlin is surrounded. All routes west are cut. Keller asks about evacuation orders. The commander says there are no orders. Communication with Berlin has been lost. Keller decides to continue west anyway. The truck drives through the night. At 2:15 a.m. on April 15th, they encounter American forward units near Magdeburg. The truck stops. Keller burns the remaining documents in a ditch. The Americans take them into custody. Keller is interrogated by a U.S. Army intelligence officer. The officer asks about the facility at Kummersdorf. Keller describes the prototypes, the Maus tanks, the TR-183 fighters, the V-3 components, the infrared sights. The officer writes everything down. He asks if any prototypes were evacuated. Keller says no. The officer asks about the vault. Keller describes the canisters. The officer stops writing. He leaves the room. Keller does not see him again. Keller is transferred to a camp for Wehrmacht prisoners. He is held for 6 weeks. On May 28th, he is released. He returns to Kummersdorf. The facility is occupied by Soviet forces. The bunkers are sealed. The testing grounds are empty. There is no trace of the prototypes. The burned hulks have been removed. Keller asks a Soviet officer what happened to the equipment. The officer does not answer. Keller is ordered to leave. He walks back to the main road. He does not return. Soviet teams stripped Kummersdorf in late April and early May. Engineers dismantled everything that survived. The mouse hull that was not burned was shipped to Kubinka for evaluation. The TA-183 remains were collected. Design documents were found in a secondary office that Keller did not reach. The documents were sent to Moscow. The V3 barrels were cut into sections and transported east. The infrared sights that survived were reverse-engineered. Soviet production began in 1946. American teams arrived in June. They found the facility mostly empty. A few buildings still contained equipment, testing rigs for jet engines, wind tunnel components, small arms prototypes. The Americans cataloged what remained and shipped it to Wright Field in Ohio. Interrogation reports from German engineers were compiled. The reports described dozens of weapons programs in various stages of completion. Most were impractical. Some were technically advanced, but resource-intensive. A few were operational, but arrived too late to affect the war. The Hortenho Tu-29 flying wing jet fighter was one of these. 2 prototypes were completed. One crashed during testing. The other was captured by American forces at Friedrichroda. The aircraft had a wooden frame and a steel tube center section. The skin was plywood bonded with sawdust and charcoal mixed with glue. The charcoal was intended to absorb radar waves. The aircraft had 2 Jumo Z-Echo 4 jet engines. Maximum speed was estimated at 970 kilometers per hour. The prototype was disassembled and shipped to the United States. It was stored at the Smithsonian. It was not reassembled until 2009. The Bachambai 349 Natter was a vertical launch rocket interceptor. The pilot was strapped into a tiny cockpit. The aircraft launched vertically from a rail. It climbed to bomber altitude in 1 minute. The pilot fired unguided rockets at the bombers, and then ejected. The nose section separated and descended by parachute. The fuselage crashed. 36 test flights were conducted. 1 pilot was killed during launch. The war ended before operational deployment. 10 aircraft were captured intact. None were used. The Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighter was operational. It entered service in July 1944. Over 1,400 were built. Chronic engine failures and fuel shortages limited effectiveness. The Jumo 04 engines had a service life of 10 to 25 hours. Skilled pilots were scarce. Training took 6 months. Most Me-262 pilots had less than 40 hours in type. Allied fighters learned to attack during takeoff and landing when the jets were vulnerable. Me-262 units claimed over 500 Allied aircraft destroyed. Over 100 HAL Me-262s were lost in combat. Another 200 were destroyed on the ground. Production continued until April 1945. The last aircraft rolled out on April 20th. None reached frontline units. The Type Dipty-1 U-boat was completed in April 1945. It was the first true submarine. It could remain submerged for days. It had a snorkel for diesel operation underwater. It had hydraulic torpedo reloading. It was faster submerged than on the surface. Maximum submerged speed was 17 knots. Range was 15,500 nautical miles. 118 Type Yinaomits boats were commissioned. 4 were sent on patrol. None engaged Allied ships. 2 were scuttled by their crews. 1 was sunk by a mine. 1 survived and surrendered. The design influenced all post-war submarines. Both American and Soviet navies copied it. The Rheintochter surface-to-air missile was tested at Peenemünde in 1944. It was a two-stage solid-fuel rocket. Range was 12 kilometers. Altitude was 8 kilometers. Radio command guidance. 82 test launches were conducted. The missile was unstable in flight. The guidance system was unreliable. Production was planned for January 1945. It never began. The factory was bombed in December 1944. The program was cancelled. All remaining hardware was destroyed before Allied capture. The Wasserfall-guided missile was more advanced, liquid-fueled, radio-guided, range 25 kilometers, altitude 15 kilometers, warhead 235 kilograms. The missile could intercept bombers at high altitude. 35 test launches were completed. 25 were successful. Production tooling was ordered in October 1944. The first production missiles were scheduled for March 1945. None were delivered. The factories were captured or destroyed. 3 prototypes were found by American forces at Peenemünde. They were shipped to White Sands. Test firings were conducted in 1946. The data informed American missile development. The Aggregate 9 was a cruise missile, winged, jet-powered, range 400 kilometers, warhead 1,000 kilograms. It was designed to strike targets beyond V2 range. Wind tunnel testing was completed. No full-scale prototypes were built. The design files were captured by Soviet forces. The files formed the basis for Soviet cruise missile programs in the 1950s. The P-1500 monster was a proposed self-propelled gun. It was to be armed with an 800mm railway gun. Weight 1,500 tons. Crew over 100. 4 submarine diesel engines for propulsion. Maximum speed 10 kilometers per hour. It was designed to destroy fortifications from beyond artillery range. 1 wooden mock-up was built. No prototype was constructed. Hitler cancelled the program in 1943. The mock-up was destroyed. The Silbervogel was a proposed orbital bomber, rocket-powered, designed to skip along the upper atmosphere. Range 23,500 kilometers. It could bomb New York from Germany. The design was completed in 1944. No construction began. The lead designer, Eugen Sanger, surrendered to American forces. He was debriefed. His designs informed American and Soviet spaceplane research. April 1945. Production of all advanced weapons ceased. Factories were overrun or bombed. Supply lines collapsed. Fuel reserves were exhausted. Trained personnel were dead or captured. Prototypes were destroyed or hidden. Some were buried. Some were sunk in lakes. Some were dismantled and scattered. The locations were not recorded. Allied forces captured thousands of documents. Most were fragmentary. Many weapons were described in files, but no physical evidence was found. Some prototypes are still missing. A report from British intelligence, dated June 12, 1945, lists 17 advanced weapons systems that were confirmed in development but never located. The report notes that German engineers provided contradictory information during interrogation. Some claimed the weapons were destroyed. Others claimed they were shipped east. Several claimed they never existed. The report concludes that documentation is insufficient to verify any account. Soviet archival records released in the 1990s show that multiple unknown weapons were recovered from underground facilities in Thuringia and Saxony. The records list inventory numbers, but no descriptions. The items were shipped to research institutes in Moscow and Leningrad. No further documentation exists. Requests for details were denied. Kummersdorf remains a restricted area. Parts of the facility are used by the German military. Other sections are abandoned. The underground bunkers are sealed. Entry is prohibited. The vault that Keller collapsed in 1945 has never been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted in 2003 detected metal objects at depth. No excavation was authorized.